Think for a second about how you actually use your car most weeks. A few miles to the grocery store, a short run to church on Sunday, the pharmacy, the bank, and back home again. Maybe it sits in the driveway 2 or 3 days at a stretch without moving at all. If that sounds like your car, I've got something to tell you that cuts against everything you've been led to believe. After more than 20 years in the shop, I've watched this quietly take down more low-mileage cars than hard driving ever has. Those careful little trips, the low-mileage, gentle life you think you're giving that car, that's not what's saving it. That's what's slowly wearing it out. And the fix is one drive a week, 10 minutes, done right. And I'm going to show you exactly what done right means, because the 10 minutes most folks picture won't do a thing. Let me walk you through what's really happening on those short hops. Your engine is built to live inside a narrow band of temperature, right around 200 degrees, give or take. Everything about the way it's designed assumes it spends most of its running life up there, fully hot. The catch is that it takes a good while to get there. Not 30 seconds, not 2 minutes, a solid 10 or 15 minutes of driving before the oil, not just the coolant, is truly up to temperature and holding steady. On a 3-mile run to the store, the engine never makes it. It's barely starting to warm up when you shut it off in the parking lot. Then it sits, cools all the way back down, and runs the whole cold routine again on the trip home. Day after day, that engine lives nearly its entire life cold, or halfway there, and never once settles into the temperature it was built for. That's the setup. Here's why it matters more than the number on your odometer. Here's what nobody at the dealership will ever tell you, because it doesn't sell cars, and it sure doesn't sell you on a low-mileage trade-in. A car is designed to be driven, not babied, not parked, driven regularly, and long enough to get hot. Steady highway miles are the easiest life an engine can have, and short cold trips are the hardest. Out on the highway, the engine holds one steady speed and one steady temperature. The transmission settles into top gear and just cruises, and nothing is constantly heating up and cooling back down. That steady state is the least stressful thing you can ask of any of it. A short cold trip is the exact opposite. Every system cold, working its hardest, then shut off before it ever settles. You could roll up 100,000 of those gentle highway miles and do less harm than 10,000 miles of cold 2-mile hops. Which means that low-mileage cream puff everybody chases, the 10-year-old car with 30,000 pampered miles, can be in worse shape than that very same car with 140,000 honest highway miles on it. The odometer only counts how far the car traveled. It tells you nothing about whether the engine ever got warm, whether the battery ever fully charged, whether the moisture ever cooked back out, and those are the things that actually decide how long the car lives. Here's the part that makes it so unfair. None of it lights up your dash. There's no warning for oil quietly turning to sludge, no light for a battery slowly losing its life, no alert for an exhaust rusting through from the inside. The car feels perfectly fine right up until the morning it doesn't, which is exactly how it blindsides the most careful owners. You weren't wrong to drive it gently and keep the miles down. Nobody ever sat you down and told you the machine needs heat to stay healthy. That a car, of all things, can be hurt by being spared. For a lot of you, this snuck up without any warning at all. That same car ran beautifully for years when you were commuting to work every day. Long drives, engine good and hot, everything happy. Then you retired, the long daily drive went away, and the car's whole life became short hops around town. Nothing about the car changed. The way it gets used did, and that quiet shift is enough to start wearing out an engine that would have run another decade. Because when an engine never gets fully hot, 3 separate things start going wrong at the same time, and not one of them ever shows up on that odometer you've been so careful with. Start with the oil, because that's where the worst of it hides. Every engine makes water. It's a natural byproduct of burning fuel, and some of it slips past the piston rings as vapor and settles down in the crankcase with your oil. On a good long drive, the engine runs hot enough, long enough, to boil that water off and vent it right out. On short trips, it never does. The water stays put. It mixes into the oil, and along with unburned fuel and the acids that combustion leaves behind, it turns your oil into something that's barely oil anymore. You've probably even seen it without knowing what you were looking at. That milky tan slime on the underside of the oil filler cap. That gunk is close to half water by weight. It's the visible proof the engine never got hot enough to dry itself out. Left to build, that becomes sludge. Thick and tar-like, about the texture of coffee grounds. And sludge is an engine killer because it clogs the narrow oil passages and the little pickup screen that feeds oil up from the pan. The engine can be full to the line and still starve because the oil can't get where it's needed. Open your owner's manual sometime and find the maintenance page, the one that lists severe service, the hard use conditions that mean you're supposed to change your oil twice as often. Short trips and constant cold running are sitting right there on that list, quietly parked next to towing and dusty back roads. The car maker knows full well that short tripping is punishing. They just filed it in the fine print instead of telling you the day they handed you the keys. The second thing is your battery, and this is the one that strands people in parking lots. Firing up the car pulls a big gulp of power out of the battery, and it's the alternator's job to put that charge back while you drive. But the alternator needs time to do it, a good stretch of running. On a 5-minute trip, it never catches up. You take more out starting the car than that short drive ever puts back, and every trip leaves the battery a little emptier than the one before. That's why the careful short trip car so often needs a new battery every couple of years, while the highway commuter gets nearly twice the life out of his. The third thing rusts your car from the inside out, in a spot you'll never see until it's too late. That same water that fouls your oil also condenses inside the exhaust, the muffler, the pipes, all of it. On a long drive, the whole system gets hot enough to dry out completely. On short trips, it never does. So the water just pools in there, mixes with acid, and eats the metal from the inside. That's how a muffler rots through on a garage-kept car with hardly any miles on it. Not from use, from sitting cold and wet, over and over and over. There's a fourth one too, and it comes from the flip side. The days the car just sits. A car isn't only hurt by short trips, it's hurt by not being driven at all. Let it sit long enough between those little errands and the rubber starts to go. Seals and gaskets that stay soft and happy when oil is circulating will dry out and shrink when everything sits still, and that's where the slow drips and weeping leaks come from. The gasoline in the tank goes stale and gummy. The tires settle into flat spots where they've sat on one patch of rubber, and a thin skin of rust forms across the brake rotors. None of that is wear from driving. All of it is damage from a machine sitting cold and idle, waiting to be used the way it was built to be. I'll show you what I mean with two of the same car. Two Toyota Avalons come through the shop, same model year. One belongs to a fellow who drives 40 minutes each way to see his grandkids and runs his errands out on the highway, 130,000 miles showing. The other is a garage queen with 31,000 miles, driven 2 or 3 miles at a time, a few days a week, for 10 years. Pull the oil cap on the low mileage one, and there's the milky slime. Its battery is on its second replacement, and the muffler's already weeping rust. The high mileage highway car, clean oil, original exhaust, still running the battery it came with. The one with a quarter of the miles is the one that's worn out. I'm curious how this one lands for you. Drop a comment and tell me 2 numbers, how many miles are on your car and how long your typical drive actually is. I've got a feeling a few of you are about to see your own car in a whole new light. And if this is already making you rethink that low miles is always better idea you've heard your entire life, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. It really does help us keep putting these out. Now here's the good part, and it costs you next to nothing. Everything I just laid out, the moisture, the sludge, the dead battery, the rusting exhaust, is headed off by one single habit a week. Once a week, take the car out on one proper drive. Here's what proper means, because this is exactly where the title's 10 minutes comes in and where most people get it wrong. The clock doesn't start the moment you leave the driveway. It starts once the engine is fully hot, temperature gauge sitting up in the middle where it belongs. So you want to drive long enough to warm all the way up and then hold there. Get out on a highway or a good open road, bring the engine up to full temperature, and then keep it at a steady 50 or 60 for a solid 10 minutes or more. 15 or 20 is better still. That sustained heat is the entire point. It boils the water and the fuel back out of your oil, it gives the alternator the time it needs to fully top off the battery, and it gets the exhaust hot enough to dry itself right out. A 10-minute crawl through town, stopping at every red light, does not count. That's just one more short trip. It has to be steady speed with the engine already hot. Door to door, you're looking at maybe 20 or 25 minutes, and the whole thing costs you $1 or $2 in gas. If a highway isn't handy where you live, the next best thing is to quit babying the errands. Bundle them. Instead of 5 separate 2-mile trips scattered across the week, chain them into one longer loop, so the engine gets a real chance to warm up and stay warm. Here's a trap I have to warn you about, though, because well-meaning people fall right into it. If your car truly sits, you're a snowbird, or a hard winter keeps you off the road, do not just start it in the driveway and let it idle to keep it exercised. That does the opposite of what you're hoping. Idling barely warms the coolant and never warms the oil, so all you're doing is making fresh moisture and leaving it sitting in the engine to do its damage. If you start it, you have to actually drive it hot, or you're better off leaving it alone and putting a cheap battery tender on it instead. And for anyone overseas running a diesel, this matters even more for you. That weekly highway run is what lets the exhaust filter burn itself clean, Skip it, and you're staring down a far bigger repair later on. Pick a day and make it a habit. A Sunday afternoon, a Saturday morning loop, whatever sticks. Take the long way to somewhere you were already headed. By the end of the drive, you'll notice the heater blows warmer and the car feels smoother, and that's not your imagination. That's everything finally reaching the temperature it wanted all along. Now set that dollar of gas beside what the short trip life actually costs you once it catches up. The battery is the small one, and even that stings. A new one runs $150 to $300, and you're buying them on a schedule the highway driver simply never sees. The exhaust is worse. When that muffler and those pipes finally rot through from the inside, replacing what's gone lands somewhere between $500 and $1,200, depending on how much of the system let go. And the sludge is the one that can end the whole car. Once it clogs the oil passages and starves the engine, there's no bottle of anything that cleans that back out. You're into real internal damage, $3,000 to $6,000 at the serious end, on a car that only had 30,000 miles on it. And it stings twice, because that low number you were counting on, the thing that was supposed to make the car worth more when the day came, means next to nothing the moment a mechanic pulls that oil cap and sees the milk. You paid for those low miles and careful living, and the sludge quietly cashed them right back out. Now think about who this really lands on. It's the retiree who did every single thing he believed was right. Kept it garaged, kept the miles low, treated it gentle, counting on it to be the last car he'd ever have to buy. I had a retired librarian come in from Arizona, driving a spotless 2014 Buick she was proud of. Garage kept, barely 40,000 miles, church and the grocery store, and not much beyond that. The oil had gone to sludge, the second battery was already failing, and the exhaust was rotting out from underneath. 40,000 miles, and that engine was in rougher shape than trucks I see at 200,000. Not one bit of it was her fault. Nobody ever told her the car needed a real run now and again. She thought sparing it was the kindest thing she could do for it. That's the quiet cruelty of the whole thing. The low-mileage car that was supposed to spare her from ever car shopping again became the very thing pushing her toward another payment she never planned to make. Here's the mercy in it, though, and it's worth saying plainly. If your car has been living that short trip life, it is almost never too late to turn the story around. Start the weekly drive now, and you stop adding fresh water and fuel to the oil. The battery starts holding a full charge again, and the exhaust finally gets its chance to dry out. Get an oil change while you're at it to flush out what's built up. And a tired short-trip engine can go right back to being a healthy one that runs for years. So here it is, plain as I can say it. Your car isn't a vase to be kept on a shelf. It's a machine that has to run hot to stay alive. And 10 honest minutes at highway speed once a week is the cheapest insurance you will ever buy it. And if you want to know why that low-mileage cream puff sitting on the used lot might just be the worst car on it, and how to spot the one that's actually worth buying, click the video on the left. I'll see you there.